Welcome to the latest episode of A.T. Kearney Procurement and Analytics Solutions, The Wave of the Future podcast series. From Chicago, Illinois, I'm Stacy Rhodes, and I'm here today with my guest, Cynthia Lesky, also in Chicago. Cynthia is president of Threshold Information, a business and technical research firm that she founded in 1993. Threshold serves corporate and consulting clients with business information research and analysis, technical literature searching, and market and competitive intelligence newsletter services. In short, Threshold's information specialists help clients use information from outside their organizations to make better informed decisions, whether they are developing a new product, selecting a new supplier, or making a new acquisition. Today we will be talking about business information research, the first of a two-part series which is so vital to businesses when it comes to staying abreast of market insights that impact their overall success. Cynthia will share insights about the trends in business information research, then the importance of timely requests, followed by what you should look for in a good information professional, and equally important, the attributes of a good client. Cynthia, thank you for joining me today. I am so excited to talk about a topic that is near and dear to me as an information professional myself. With your background and experience, I'd like to start by asking you, what trends have you seen in business information research over the past few years?
Well, hello, Stacy, and thank you so much for inviting me to record with you. At Threshold, we have seen a number of changes in the types of research assignments we receive from our clients. Some changes are related to the obvious fact that there is just too much information for people to deal with, and at the same time, authoritative information is harder to find. The sheer volume of potentially important business news can be overwhelming and even chaotic. And so we are called on to help reduce that chaos with news digests and other types of monitoring services. With these kinds of services, we can help marketers and competitive intelligence groups and R&D staffs keep up to date on what's really going on in their markets, what their competitors are doing, and how their customers or consumers are trending without having to read and make judgments about everything that comes across their desks. And the other big trend that is inescapable is that our clients have more complex research needs. Obviously, most people are Google literate and able to handle the easy questions themselves. And so we get the tough jobs. The need may be for information on something that is relatively obscure, like an emerging technology or a niche industry. Sometimes the problem is that there's just too much information, and an intelligence specialist needs to sort through it and recognize what's important and make the connections and generally turn a pile of data into real intelligence. And you know, that goal of actionable intelligence is just so important. We want our reports to clearly point to the next step that the readers can take to achieve their goal. No one wants or needs more stuff to read. Our clients want the information, they want our insights, and they want those succinctly delivered in a convenient way. So now we're spending more time analyzing and thinking about what the information means, and more time packaging our findings to be immediately useful.
Cynthia, I absolutely agree and identify with your statements. Information has grown significantly and is located in various resources, some easily accessible, others not, where requests are more complex and the delivery must be robust and useful, where the client doesn't have to do any additional work or rework. Therefore, given with what you've seen, when should our listeners ask for help with information research, and what should they be aware of?
Stacy, I'm sure you have experienced this with your own clients in A.T. Kearney's Knowledge Center. And my answer is probably what you tell your own clients when the research becomes too cumbersome and is not an efficient or effective use of their time, or when the research skills or resources aren't available to them, then they should turn to a specialist.
Absolutely. User specialists make so much sense. Now, for any skeptics or those that are sitting on the fence regarding research service providers, would you share an example of how you've helped one of your clients?
Oh, Stacy, there are so many of them. We've dealt with literally thousands of research assignments over the years. But one that comes to mind is a recent one where a major manufacturer asked for a clear map, if you will, of one of its customers' consumer-facing health and wellness activities over the last 3 years. The manufacturer was striving for a more productive relationship with its customer. It would have taken our client many, many hours to identify and evaluate all the many changes in the customer's offerings, in its promotions, marketing communications, and alliances that the customer had executed in that time frame. But we can more efficiently identify all of that, and we can bring focus and concentration to the engagement and ultimately hand the client a concise, illustrated map of the journey that the customer has been on, as well as insights on some likely direction that they, the client, could take next. Thus, setting up our client, the manufacturer, for its next move in the relationship it was trying to enhance. The key here is recognizing when information that is strategically important can't be found or can't be made sense of in a reasonable amount of time. In those circumstances, you have a project which a business intelligence professional can more effectively handle than you can. Besides having research and analysis as our core competency, organizations like ours have appropriate tools like proprietary subscription databases, and we are much better at crafting the right search strategies to locate information more quickly. I also want to mention that we usually assume we're talking about publicly available content, but there are times when the needed information can't be pieced together with secondary research. That is, it's not going to be found in any published or open source. But our judgment may tell us that the information will be available through primary research. That is, by talking to experts or people who have reason to know something about something obscure.
So we are clear for our listeners. What are the uses then for primary research versus secondary research?
Well, Stacy, that's another one of those areas, like so many others, that have been evolving. Much of what our clients are looking for can be found in secondary research. Public sources such as business magazines and industry blogs, government reports, patent databases, all kinds of other resources are great sources of information that has already been collected and reported in a non-proprietary way. However, the client may have a need for information that hasn't been published or that can only be tapped by going to the subject matter experts. In this case, primary research is called for. Rather than conducting focus groups or surveys as a traditional market researcher would, we have conversations with SMEs. Here's an example of a project in which we use both secondary research and primary research, and that can be a powerful combination. A client asked us to investigate a specific new technology and its potential to disrupt the marketplace. We conducted secondary research to determine what, if anything, had already been done with that technology and what patents its competitors held in that area. However, the secondary research didn't reveal or even speculate on how the technology would change the market. To get some insight there, we did primary research. We interviewed a number of industry experts by phone, and we found out their opinions on the technology's future and which companies they believed would pose a threat to our client. The end result was a very successful research outcome. Incidentally, the whole world of social media is expanding the definition of primary research. We've done projects where we've combed through hundreds of tweets, for instance. So using social information is also a type of primary research.
Cynthia, in my experience, clients will request secondary research thinking we can access public sources and that there is published information readily available at the click of a button. What will you say to our audience that might think if secondary research is published information, then isn't all secondary research available online?
Oh, not at all. Or at least most of it is not actually available in an accessible way. Yes, there are great resources on the web from associations and consulting firms and publishers and an endless number of respectable content providers. But some publications only offer current articles or excerpts of reports. And so we have to turn to the hidden web, the access-controlled websites, or the proprietary subscription-only databases, and other kinds of buried information that is electronic but not available to most people. And sometimes getting to the desired data requires a thorough knowledge of a convoluted website. Government data is a prime example of this. The U.S. government collects a lot of fantastic data on business activities, as do individual states, the EU, and other foreign governments. But getting to it is tricky, even if the websites are in English.
Beyond the research tools used, what other skills or experiences should an information professional have?
Well, although most of us have graduate degrees in library or information science or MBAs or both, we naturally acquire a great many specific tricks and skills on the job. But even more importantly, there are some personality characteristics that are natural to people who go into this kind of work. Most of all, a good information professional or research analyst is curious, perhaps even curious to a fault. A problem-solving orientation is another trait of good business intelligence professionals. We like to look at problems from all sides, and we try to figure out what the best solutions are and then how to get to those solutions. But just as important, though, is a focus on results and the client's needs. The information needs to be usable and relevant to the client, and we need to have the judgment to know which pieces of information have a direct impact. And how meaningful will it all be for the client? The ability to evaluate and filter information according to the client's needs is critical. And that idea of evaluation brings up another point for me. With all of the changes the web has wrought, there has been a decline in editorial control in much of the content we all use. The opportunity for errors and omissions in business information sources is greater now than ever. So we have to have a healthy skepticism toward much of what we read and be prepared to verify and cross-check those facts that are strategically important.
Right here, Cynthia, as you mentioned having a healthy skepticism, I would just like to let our listeners know that the focus of part 2 in our series regarding business information research will dive deeper into skeptical thinking and knowledge seeking for the information professional, and I am looking forward to that discussion very much. Now, moving on, since you've informed our listeners on what makes a good information professional, how will you describe the attributes of a good client?
Well, Stacy, Threshold is lucky to work with a number of Fortune 500 companies and a number of functions within these types of companies. However, we find that the company's size or function have little impact on who makes the best clients. Instead, as with any other business relationship, it's a matter of respect and trust and building that relationship. When it comes down to it, we can do our best work for those clients who provide us with an understanding of how the research will be used. Yes, we understand that you are working on highly sensitive projects on which millions of dollars might be riding. But if we can see the broader context of the research, it provides a grounded framework in which we can conduct the information search and draw conclusions from what we find. Good clients also share what they already know about the topic so that our work expands their knowledge rather than risks duplicating it. They also recognize that it takes time to do a good job. Yes, we sometimes get tight deadlines for projects, and we'll try to meet those deadlines if we can. But the results are not going to be as complete and as reliable as when we have the time to be more thorough. Really excellent research work cannot be rushed.
Cynthia, I appreciate you making your last statement. I think it's important to say again that really excellent research work cannot be rushed. Well, with that being said, Cynthia, unfortunately, we've approached the end of this podcast. Are there any last thoughts you'd like to share?
Well, I'd like to reiterate 3 points for your listeners. First, if you're annoyed at the amount of time you're spending on research or frustrated with the inadequate results of your own searches, or if you can't keep up with the daily deluge of news, then you need an information professional. You may be surprised at what we can do to make your life easier. Second, invest the half hour or more it might take to have a thorough project interview with us. An email to your research professional can start the process, but a conversation will really help to ensure that we understand what you need. And third, I mentioned the need for skepticism about what one finds on the net. It's not just the information pros who need to be skeptical. Given the current news environment, we all need to be skeptical. Good business and good citizenship require us to be wary that the news on which we judge the world and on which we make decisions is accurate and reliable. I think this idea of skepticism in the pursuit of knowledge is so important. I am so concerned about the need for careful attention to accuracy that I am just delighted that you have asked me to have another conversation with you about what I've been calling skeptical knowledge seeking. So thank you, Stacy, for having me on this podcast, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Well, that brings us to the end of this podcast on business information research. I'm Stacy Rhodes, and I'd like to thank Cynthia Lesky for being my guest today, and Tom Klein, our production engineer in San Francisco. Thank you for listening to this edition of The Wave of the Future. If you have any comments regarding this podcast, please tweet them via our Twitter handle at ATKPAS. Alternatively, you can email us at podcast@atkearney.com. This has been an A.T. Kearney Procurement and Analytics Solutions podcast production. Join us again next time for The Wave of the Future. And remember, sharing knowledge is powerful.